This podcast is sponsored by M1 Finance. When it comes to your financial fitness, it's best to prepare for the long game. M1 Finance gives you all the tools you need to grow your wealth without charging any management fees so you can put more of your money where it counts. Plus, with this finance super app, you can invest, borrow, and spend all in one place, making it easier to see the big picture. Visit m1finance.com/Fox Sports. That's M1 with the number 1 to sign up and get a $30 bonus when you make a $1,000 deposit after approval. Terms and conditions apply. Investing involves risk, including the risk of loss. M1 Finance, member FINRA SIPC.
Millions of Americans are getting back to work. CareerBuilder calls it the great rehire. And we want to help you get the best jobs before everyone else. CareerBuilder gives you the competitive edge to get the job you want, at the salary you want, with the benefits you want. We even send job alerts, so your perfect job lands right in your inbox. Go to CareerBuilder.com today, or get left with whatever jobs are left. Find your next job fast at CareerBuilder.com.
To show you how easy it is to file a claim with Geico, we hired a soap opera star.
Gracious me, my car has storm damage and I've had to file a claim. Could it possibly get worse? Will my claims team leave me for someone else? Someone less intense?
No. Actually, when you file a claim with Geico, you get your own dedicated claims team who promises to stay with you throughout the process.
Oh, I've never known such loyalty. I can't wait for the second season.
Geico. Great service without all the drama.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Do not. That's enough do nots. Do not touch that dial. You heard the man. It's time for Fox Sports Sundays. We kick off the day with great exuberance, and we are ready. So please, put your seat backs forward and your tray tables upright. We are set for takeoff. My name is Bernie Fratto. I'm coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. We will take you up to 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern, along with my savvy and capable crew, Bo Benson, Chris Perfett, and Brian Finley on the updates as they man the ship from our Los Angeles compound. We've got a ton on the agenda tonight, including our full synopsis of Hard Knocks Episode 4 a little bit later. By the way, we will not be talking about Bishop Sycamore. I repeat, we will not be talking about Bishop Sycamore. Our full coverage of Bishop Sycamore has just concluded. We will not be talking about Javi Baez. I don't care if he likes the fans, they like him, he apologized. I'm done with that. But we will have a comprehensive college football analysis, including even a mascot study. And which of the top 15 teams offer a key seasonal stat that you want to know about? Plus, we've got a special guest in the final hour all the way from Ann Arbor, Michigan, to talk Big Ten football and, of course, Michigan football in the irrepressible Jim Harbaugh, who got out of the gate today, 47-14 against Western Michigan. They've got Washington on deck and a Big Ten season looming. We'll see if Harbaugh can do what he was hired to do, and that's beat Ohio State. We will see. The gentleman that will join us, nobody connected better to Michigan football than anybody I've ever known. We worked together in Ann Arbor back in the early 90s. He's had his finger on the pulse ever since and has been a fixture there. And trust me, he's got access. It'll be a lot of fun. He's not going to join us until the final hour of the show, but you're not going to want to miss that. But we start with what I believe is the biggest ongoing story of the NFL season, and that is the fact that multiple quarterbacks, not just rookies, multiple quarterbacks will be under center for their new teams this season for the first time. You know, teams like the Rams and Saints and Denver Broncos, teams who have real designs on getting to the promised land. And that's where we begin. We begin with a dose of historical reality. And I want to start with the rookies. By the way, this is going to be a very interesting season, not for the least of which they're going to play 17 games. So it's going to take even more competitive stamina. In which of these gentlemen getting under center for the first time with the new team can be what I would call a force multiplier on their team. Now, as far as the rookies, the NFL draft in the last 50 years, there have been 44 quarterbacks who have been selected either number 1, number 2, or number 3 overall. But only 2 of them in the last 50 years in this boat have actually won a Super Bowl. And 2, Troy Aikman and Peyton Manning, well, they did it with the team that actually drafted them. That's what I meant. They did only two of them actually won a Super Bowl with a team that actually drafted them. So this is an inexact science, and it's certainly an inexact art. So I think patience is going to be absolutely the order of the day when these young men get under center. And the truth of the matter is, only one will be under center week one, and that's Trevor Lawrence as they travel to Houston. They're actually a 3-point favorite. Imagine that. A rookie coach, a rookie quarterback with a terrible team in Jacksonville that won one game. They're laying 3 points on the road. Houston is the proverbial divisional dog, of which you heard me earlier talk about, 64% since 2005. You might have to hold your nose, but Houston might be the play. But I digress. Just so you know, this will only be the 10th time in NFL history that a quarterback drafted number one overall started week one. And in the previous 9 games, they were a resounding 1-8. 12 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. The only quarterback to win his first game out of the gate after being drafted number one overall was David Carr of the Houston Texans. But behind that terrible offensive line, his career was short-lived. He got hit more than Rocky Balboa, and now he's a TV commentator. Does a fine job. This ain't easy, folks. And if you don't think it's easy for rookies, how about guys who've been in the league? I'm going to start with Jameis Winston. Yeah, I've been pretty critical of him because the numbers tell me to be. Now, the New Orleans Saints have officially named Jameis Winston as the first-time successor. He's the starter in New Orleans, but he's the first-time successor in 16 years to, of course, future Hall of Famer and, again, current TV broadcaster Drew Brees. And with it, Sean Payton, they're going to face what I consider a pretty significant risk-reward dilemma. The good news is that Jameis Winston actually led the NFL in passing yards with 5,109 2 years ago and was ranked second in passes thrown 20 yards or more in his final season with Tampa Bay. The bad news is he became the first quarterback to throw at least 30 touchdown passes and 30 interceptions in the same season. In the end, Jameis Winston, who's a guy who never saw a pass he didn't like, in his tenure at Tampa Bay, threw 88 interceptions and lost 23 fumbles in 70 games with the Bucs. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. In 70 games, he threw 88 interceptions and lost 23 fumbles. You don't win football games by handing it to the other team. By the way, those 30 interceptions, killers. 6 of them were on the first possession, 6 were in the fourth quarter when his team was leading, and 6 were for pick sixes. But he's got a ways to go to catch Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford is the current winner in that category, also starting for his new team. Matt Stafford in his career has 23 pick sixes. He leads the pack, but I digress. I will say this, though. Jameis Winston now enhances the value of every Tampa Bay pass catcher. Check that. He's with the Saints now, including Alvin Kamara, who figures to benefit from the most. And I would say that he also makes the over-under total in interceptions in a Saints game a highly sought-after proposition. But I don't want to bag on Winston. I'm just giving you the numbers, okay? For all I know, Winston's come into New Orleans. He's worked hard. He's been a model citizen. I think he's very popular in the locker room. But you got to win in this league, or it's the old not for long, right? Winston, though, is 28-42 as a starter. He's only 30-36 against the spread as a starter, and he's 12-21 at home as a starter, and 7-14 as a favorite. So he's never performed with any degree of success, but he's going to get a chance with a very stable organization with an excellent coach. And frankly, Jameis should be the starter. He does have a higher ceiling in theory than Taysom Hill. I like Taysom Hill, and Taysom Hill will probably see his fair share of action, but I think it makes sense to give Jameis the start. He knows what it's like to start in the NFL every week, and I think he's got something to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he does have a lot of ability. Let's see what happens there. I can't say I have high hopes, but there's a situation where Jameis Winston, again, part of a crop of players who will be taking snaps under center for the first time with their new team. Teddy Bridgewater, he won the job over Drew Lock. Teddy Bridgewater, major thumbs up for me. I think Teddy Bridgewater is a winner. In Minnesota, he was a missed field goal away from beating Seattle in the playoffs after leading the Vikings to an 11-5 record that season. It was not his fault. Then he gets to New Orleans, and in 2019, he stepped in when Drew Brees went down in September and proceeded to go 5-0 as a starter. In his first game in Seattle on the road in 2019, and he was backing up Drew Brees after Brees got hurt, he held a team meeting the night before, and he won the team over. He told the team, look, I'm not Drew Brees, but if you get on my back and follow me, I will not let you down. And the next day at CenturyLink Field, Teddy Two Gloves threw for 2 touchdowns and beat Russell Wilson and the Seahawks 33-27. Not for nothing. It was the first time a Pete Carroll coach team in Seattle lost a home game in the month of September. He kept the seat warm for Brees for 5 weeks, went 5-0, and the Saints finished 13-3 that season. I think Teddy Bridgewater is a winner. Don't take my word for it. By the way, Teddy Bridgewater was only plus 145 to get the starting job in May. So he was not the favorite. It was Drew Lock all the way to the very end. But if you look at Teddy Bridgewater's career, right, he was 35-14 in his career against the spread. He still is. He's still playing. It's not the past tense. Teddy Bridgewater, 24-7 as an underdog. He's 21-3 against the spread on the road. He's 19-2 against the spread as a road dog. Now, interestingly enough, terrible what happened in New Orleans with Hurricane Ida. It looks like the Saints will be misplaced again, like they were back in 06 or 05. And they're going to be playing in Jacksonville, I believe. They'll be hosting Green Bay week 1. And the last I've checked, I believe New Orleans is a 3-point underdog. I haven't fired on that game. But any game that you back Teddy Bridgewater in, I think you're going to find value. You're going to find a situation where he's not going to beat himself. I liked him at Louisville. I liked him in Minnesota. I liked him in New Orleans, and now I like him in Denver. I think it's a good sort of a situation for them to be in, right? Look, there's never any guarantees. I know a lot of people are upset that Justin Fields isn't starting. He'll be starting soon. And I don't know why people bag on Andy Dalton, another quarterback that'll be under center for a new team. Dalton, in his last 8-9 years, he's won over 75 games as a starter. He's thrown over 200 touchdown passes. He's thrown for over 30,000 yards. He's in good company. Justin Fields checks most of the boxes. He just needs a little time. You saw he just about got killed in that game against Buffalo, and that was a pre-snap read he could have made. He didn't see a linebacker shift right before he took the snap, or he could have audibled out and called for a different protection. There are things he could have done. He elected not to. And the truth of the matter is, those are the type of things you got to clean up before you can be an everyday starter in the NFL. New Orleans is in a, tough division. Carolina, I only got them projecting to go 8-9, but if Christian McCaffrey can have his usual 1,000-yard season, they're going to be a tough out. Atlanta, their new coach Arthur Smith, he still gets Matt Ryan, who's going to get Hall of Fame votes. They're not going to be good, but they're going to be a tough out. Then you got Tampa Bay, who you can pretty much pencil in, right? Tampa Bay, nothing. They got some guy named Tom Brady who people still like to make fun of. What if I told you this? Tom Brady last year threw for more yards than Aaron Rodgers, more touchdown passes than Pat Mahomes, and oh, by the way, they beat the Chiefs by 22 in the Super Bowl. Sure, don't give me any credit. Say it was the defense. These are the same people that said they'd only win 6 games last year. All I know is this. Quarterback is an incredibly important position. It's the thinnest position in all of sports. And without a quarterback who's your field general, who your team will take in the personality of, you don't want to be a guy that you just win because of. You want to, or check that you might win with. You want to be that guy you win because of, that when the fourth quarter is staring you down the barrel and it's a situation where you're behind and it could be the game to whether you make the playoffs or not, your team's got to look at you and your huddle presence, and you got to be able to look at them and say, I got this. Josh Allen's done it. Baker Mayfield's done it. A lot of young Bucks have done it. Here's Teddy Bridgewater's chance. Here's Jameis Winston's chance. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And by the way, here's Trevor Lawrence's chance. And maybe here's even Dak Prescott's chance. Next Thursday night is 7.5-point underdogs on the road against the defending champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Coming up, we're going to talk about Dak Prescott and his team. Hard Knocks Episode 4 is in the books. Did I like it? What are my takeaways? Well, I'll tell you. Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99% of the places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report limitations apply. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. Don't go away. You're listening to Fox Sports Sunday on Fox Sports Radio.
Fox Sports Radio has the best sports talk lineup in the nation. Catch all of our shows at foxsportsradio.com. And within the iHeartRadio app, search FSR to listen live.
Good afternoon. Would you like to try a free sample of our double fudge brownie?
Oh, sure. That's very good. I'll just take one more, just to be sure. Yep, still very good.
Some things never change, like never being able to take just one free sample. And Geico saving folks lots of money on their car insurance.
Is that macadamia nut I taste? Let me take one more.
Sir?
Yeah, I thought so.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Geico knows there are many reasons why you ride. From the exciting adventure of the daily commute to the peace of mind that Geico always has your back with 24/7 access to claim service and legendary customer service. But Pamela Mund had one reason in particular.
My skin is extremely averse to most fabrics, except for the soft, buttery feeling of leather. Thankfully, I found my clan of leather lovers in the biking community. It's been life-changing.
Geico Motorcycle. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Hey, it's Wilmer Valderrama from Essential Voices with Wilmer Valderrama Podcast. Lo siguiente es un mensaje de State Farm. Some stories deserve to be told. Incredible, but totally true stories. Stories that we knew nothing about, but that now we want to know everything about. Stories that were invisible but have found a way to travel from ear to ear. Stories that captivate us, move us, and even teach us. Stories that used to be secret but that are now a podcast. State Farm celebrates the fact that those stories can now be enjoyed by all. And that's why we want to share a bit of information that we can all enjoy as well. State Farm has surprisingly great rates on car insurance. Yes, for real. If you need to insure your car, don't hesitate to talk to a State Farm agent and take a look at the solutions that match your needs. It's easy. For surprisingly great rates that fit any budget, como un buen vecino, State Farm está ahí.
We are back on Fox Sports Sunday, Fox Sports Radio. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. And yes, we'll take you up to 3 a.m. Pacific tonight, 6 a.m. Eastern. Talking a little Hard Knocks, 4 down, 1 to go. And so last Tuesday night, I watched the episode knowing that that was the day final cuts were going to be made. So I had to watch it a little bit with a jaundiced eye, but nonetheless, the same takeaway I've had since week 1 about head coach Mike McCarthy. You look up clunky in the dictionary and you see his picture. He's inarticulate, and he's got this, it's the same speech at halftime. It's the same speech. Let's win this game. You know, the most successful leaders, the most successful coaches that I've observed, they understand this about winning in any sport or in life. It's a process-oriented endeavor. It's not a situation where you focus on the outcome. You focus on the process that leads to the outcome. That's what Nick Saban does. That's what John Wooden did. That's what Urban Meyer did at 3 colleges. That's what Augie Garrido did at Cal State Fullerton, the greatest college baseball coach of all time. But Mike McCarthy is Mike McCarthy, and I don't expect him to change. And he did win a Super Bowl, so what do I know? All right, in the 4th episode of HBO's Hard Knocks, well, again, it came the night of the roster cut down to 53, and I waited till the end to watch it, but my fears were 3 guys I was rooting for. Well, spoiler alert, they all ended up getting cut, but these were some of the highlights of Hard Knocks last week. These are some thoughts. I pick on the show, but I enjoy it and I watch it. This hasn't been the most compelling, I would say, iteration of Hard Knocks because the Cowboys just aren't that interesting to me in terms of personalities. I don't hold that against them. Still an iconic franchise. It's just that they don't have the Jimmy Valvano type characters I get such a kick out of. COVID reared its ugly head. That forced the team into virtual meetings again. I get a kick out of John Fossil, the son of the great Jim Fossil, rest his soul, who was a great NFL coach. He lived here in Vegas. I knew him. He was a terrific guy. And he was, who couldn't relate to his dissertation that COVID is for the birds, but the players were able to return to the Star after a couple of days. But their defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn, was still in protocol. And so a guy by the name of Joe Witt stepped in, and he has his own coaching style, which to me didn't thrill me. Once again, one of the series favorites, the gentleman from Mexico, his name is Isaac Alarcon, not to be confused with Isaac Lowenkron, who's a star here at Fox Sports Radio. And Isaac Alarcon trying to be a star with the Cowboys at the Star. And the irony is he, even though he acknowledges he's from Mexico, which is extremely hot there during the summer, he was literally feeling the heat, figuratively feeling the heat, and that Dallas sun was just beating down on them, and it was obvious that with cuts looming, he knew that he had to have a good day. He knew he was on the bubble, but the heat was getting the best of him. It was something that I really felt for the young man. I felt like he was almost admitting that he knew he wasn't going to be able to limp across the finish line. And spoiler alert, he did end up getting cut. Then the camera shifted to Jaquan Hardy, the running back who had the issue with the contact lenses, you remember, and all that. Then he had glasses, and then he had other issues. And then he finally settled into better contact lenses, and he's been fighting for a spot. And he kind of caught a break. It's one of those, situations. He was behind a running back named Rico Dowdle on the depth chart, but it turns out Dowdle, had an injury, hip injury, that sent him to the IR. So you won't be seeing Rico Suave or Rico Dowdle anytime this year in the Cowboys. It's a shame to have that happen to the young man, but what that did was open the door for Jaquan Hardy. And the running backs coach, Skip Pete, told him on no uncertain terms, here's what you got in front of you, man. Right? And then they went into Jaquan Hardy a little bit, and he's just like you and I. He went out, he found a restaurant there in Dallas or Frisco that made his favorite Southern food, and he was sitting there like, we can all relate to that. You're looking forward to a meal, you go sit down, and then you're waiting, and he's starving, and they put the tray in front of him. He's got a big smile on his face. Again, that was actually very relatable. This guy became very likable, right? And he was eating his I think it was some kind of fried chicken or maybe gizzards, and then there some kind of mashup of mac and cheese and yams, and it was a human moment that I thought the Hard Knocks crew did a good job of giving you a glimpse behind these people. Yeah, they're National Football League wannabes, they're players, they're guys that are trying to do something with their life. They're human beings, though. I found myself rooting for Jaquan Hardy. He had an okay game. They showed, he caught a couple passes in the flat, had a couple runs. He didn't make the team. Micah Parsons, again, he stepped in, and here's a stud waiting to happen. Great player out of Penn State, first-round draft choice, another lover of Southern cuisine. He had the teammates over to his house, and then he had a little game of Connect Four, and he's better in Connect Four than he is at chess. So if that excites you, God bless you. It didn't excite me. I thought that was kind of stupid. And one of the things that they've really not done a lot in this Hard Knocks is talk a lot about veterans, right? But they did show a bit of a rivalry between Amari Cooper and Trayvon Diggs, and the kind of one-on-one battles that go on in camp. Diggs is a defensive back, tough player. Amari Cooper is a brilliant receiver, and Dak Prescott was kind of egging him on, and it showed you, kind of took you behind the scenes to show how intense competition can be, even for guys who've already made the team. I mean, these are world-class athletes, right? And then Dak Prescott weighed in again, and who knew he was so verbose? He started talking about cornhole in the meeting, and the long and the short of it is, and then he got finally back to full participation in practice, and again, you are reminded why people like Dak Prescott so much. Then something unexpected came in out of left field. A player by the name of Terrell Basham, who's a stand-up wannabe comedian, took the mic at a comedy club, all right? I don't know, man. If this is his post-career path, I don't have high hopes. But he did manage to make his teammates laugh. He did a rendition of his routine in a meeting as well. and he told some story about going to a restaurant and with somebody, an owner of a restaurant. And it didn't flop, right? But I don't think anybody's going to, confuse him with Jerry Seinfeld or Dave Chappelle anytime soon, but give him an A for effort, right? It was almost like the old rookie show things they used to do. That's, I don't know if they do that in the NFL anymore. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But if they don't show it. And those used to be classic. And then Kamara was back at center stage. This time he was with, his family. And, this was, again, another human moment. His family was shopping for jerseys at the Cowboys Pro Shop, but they couldn't find a Kamara jersey, right? And then who shows up at a team meeting in street clothes? Mike McCarthy. Go take a look at that shirt. I don't know what the hell that was. I don't know if you buy that at Omar the tent maker or you have it custom made. I don't know how. I'll just leave it right there. But, the players kind of gave him his due. He came walking in. He was kind of dressed up, sort of half dressed up for him. And then he said something that he has the right to say, and it's something that would come from a veteran coach, and Mike McCarthy is a veteran coach. He walked in, and he gave everybody sort of this sobering reminder that, guys, look around. Some of you are not going to be with his team in a few days. And then he took a little shot at Isaac Alarcon, not to be confused with Isaac Lowenkron, about wanting that cake. And that was one of those campy things. Unless you've been watching Hard Knocks from the beginning, you wouldn't know what that was. And that finally brought us to the final preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and obviously that did not go well. But Dallas only played their 2s and 3s, and they were matched against Jacksonville's 1s. And again, Jaquan Hardy was fighting to make his case, and I'm so happy to. Ezekiel Elliott was on the sideline providing commentary. He was really encouraging him on. And, Hardy did have a big role in the touchdown drive with Garrett Gilbert at quarterback. But then there was an interception, and that kind of killed everything. And Hardy opened the second half. He even made a tackle on special teams. Isaac Alarcon, he was named the captain for the game, but his play, he didn't exactly light it up. He didn't flash. He did play well, but he didn't look to be NFL quality. And Kamara still had some struggles. And these three guys, you root for them all to make the team. I just did. I can't help it. I did. They didn't, though. All right, you knew about the outcome and the initial 53-man roster, and you were pulling for these guys. But even Ben DiNucci, not to be confused with Don Fanucci, the Black Hand, even though these guys, they did generate sympathy. But the truth of the matter is Ben DiNucci is not a major league quarterback, and they showed that slow-mo shot of his sidearm delivery, and he's had his day in the sun. He got further than most people in life, but it doesn't look like he's got a future with the Dallas Cowboys, maybe somewhere else. So there's one final episode next week that will sort of cover the final touches as Dallas gets ready to go through, and prepare for the first game, which will actually be 2 days after that episode airs. But obviously, it's all done. It's all behind us now. I think the filming's done and the cuts are done. I'm hoping they take us a little bit more behind the scenes. And I'm hoping maybe Jaquan Hardy or one of the, Isaac Alarcon, or the players I just mentioned, maybe end up on the practice squad. You never know. Sometimes it's a longer journey to the NFL, and sometimes, it's not always as a crow flies. And they're on film. So maybe somebody saw what they like with Jaquan Hardy on that special teams tackle, or maybe not. But the truth of the matter is, those are the things I focused on most, the human aspect, the guys trying to make the team and pulling them away, that they have lives outside of football, and in many ways are just like you and me. I still get a kick out of Hardy going to that restaurant looking so forward to that favorite dish they prepare for him. He even said when they called him, they go, "Hey, is this you, Jaquan?" He goes, "Yeah, you got a kick out of that." He got a big smile. So at the end of the day, these guys are human beings. We're going to bring in the crew, get their thoughts on Hard Knocks, and as we head into episode 5, and if they had any takeaways, or maybe they disagree with some of the things I said, or maybe they had some takeaways on some things I missed. But first, let's go to the man. He's so respected. He was at the Louvre in France, and they told him, "Go ahead, Bruin. You can actually touch the artwork." It's Bruin Finley with the latest.
Well, thank you so much, Bernie. And Ed Ogeron, seemingly well respected as the LSU head football coach. You might have seen that there was some video that surfaced of him as he was walking on Saturday into the Rose Bowl to take on UCLA, where he was heckled by a UCLA fan, and he called out that fan and said, "You're wearing a sissy blue shirt." I think he might have been referencing, Bernie, his defense.
From the left hash mark, a high shotgun snap is back. DTR pegs one over the middle. It's caught at the 30-yard line to the 25 to the 22. Goes Kyle Phillips. He's still on his feet. He's breaking tackles. He scores! That could be the knockout punch.
The UCLA Radio Network, that is the voice of the great Josh Lewin, and UCLA storms ahead of Edo and the Tigers 38-27, the final score. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who was on the throwing end of that highlight there, had 3 touchdowns as the Bruins most certainly are going to be surfacing into the top 25 next week. Number 5, Georgia wins a slobber knocker against number 3 Clemson 10-3. The Tigers quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, was sacked 7 times as he had a tough time finding any time in the pocket to throw. Number 1, Alabama emasculates Miami 44-13. Bryce Young, 4 touchdown throws as the Hurricanes, I guess, are not back just yet after that humbling performance. Number 15, USC, scoring 17 points in the fourth quarter as they dent San Jose State 30-7. Number 2, Oklahoma, had a hard go of it against Tulane, but the Sooners prevail 40-35. Texas A&M, the number 6 team in the country, obliterating Kent State 41-10. Up and down day for the Pac-12 because on the downside you had BYU beating Arizona 24-16, and that was Wildcats head coach Jed Fish, his head coaching debut for U of A, and he said, quote, "I could have done a better job. I should have called a better game earlier," close quote. He didn't blame his players one bit in that 11-minute post-game press conference. Utah State surprises Washington State 26-23. This was a game where the Aggies scored the go-ahead touchdown with 13 seconds to go in the fourth quarter after the Cougs had a 12-point lead halfway through the final period. Nevada takes it to Cal 22-17, a big game for Carson Strong, 2 touchdown throws, looking like that potential dark horse of a Heisman candidate. Montana, they shut down number 20 Washington 13-7, and 11th ranked Oregon finding a way to eke out a win against Fresno State 31-24. And finally, from the U.S. Open in New York, third round action, Shelby Rogers, the American, with the upset over number 1 Ash Barty in 3 sets. And on the men's side, world number 1 Novak Djokovic, he is through though to the 4th round, so no upset there. Bernie Fratto, sending it back to you, my friend.
I heard the voice of Josh Lewin. I said, that's Josh Lewin. I haven't seen him in years. I knew Josh in Detroit. In 98, he did work for Fox Sports Detroit. A very versatile and talented and funny broadcast guy. Say hi to him if you see him.
Yeah, he's one of the
Chargers. Best. Yeah, he is. All right. Let's stick with you, Brian. Hard Knocks. If you didn't watch it, you don't have to make anything up. Do you have any thoughts?
Bernie, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not watch it, so I am focused. I was just in this glow of college football and getting ready for this week that was after UCLA's Week 0 win, so I didn't get a chance to watch that episode. So,
all right. Well, I thought it humanized the Dallas Cowboys. I've been critical, as you guys know, of this iteration of Hard Knocks, but there's one episode left. Next Tuesday night on HBO. It airs 7 o'clock Pacific out here. If you get a chance, watch it. It's worth watching. And, you know, look, the Cowboys, whether you like them or not, they have an iconic place in the history of the lexicon of the National Football League. So this current team trying to live up to past teams, and it's not so easy. Chris Perfett, I know you can give a flying horse's patoot about the Cowboys for multiple reasons, and I get that and I understand that. Did you have a chance to sample Hard Knocks at all?
No, I did not get to sample it this week. It is funny, though, because you mentioned about the humanizing element, and this is the week where I think a lot of people wake up and look at the NFL and realize, oh, these are human beings who are losing jobs out here, because cuts come down, and it's always a harsh thing because we go from 90-man rosters to 53-man roster. You do the math in your head, little shy of about 50% of those who were playing last month no longer have a team. Across 32 teams, you start to extrapolate that out, do the math there. It's always funny to me because that comes up very late. It's like always at this moment where we realize and remind everyone, oh yeah, these are real people losing their jobs. Yeah, they always were. So but it is good at least that we get those reminders.
I enjoyed this, episode 3 was a little bit more entertaining. Episode 4 was a little more poignant, if that's a fair word to use. The one thing Rod Marinelli always said is everything you do is on tape. And so a player who might not have a spot with the Cowboys because maybe at his position they're loaded, if you are on tape and do something good, some other team is going to find you, and you might still get a job. Plenty of guys get cut. Plenty of guys end up on other rosters, and down the road end up as starters. So it's always a long journey. It can be a marathon, not a sprint. Look, only 50% of first-round draft choices actually make it. So the truth of the matter is, just because you're cut doesn't mean your career is over. Bull Benson, are we going to go 0 for 3? Did you watch Hard Knocks?
I actually went on the HBO Max app, and I was going to watch Hard Knocks. And then I saw they added Jurassic Park, so I got distracted and watched that instead.
Just kidding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just channeled my inner Afro man there. I was going to watch Hard Knocks, but then I got high. Go ahead. I cut you off, buddy.
Yeah, no, I decided to watch Jurassic Park instead of Hard Knocks. So,
well, go ahead and give us a movie review while we got you.
Oh no, Jurassic Park's one of my favorite movies ever.
It came out in '93.
Yeah,
for crying out loud.
Yeah. I think I remember seeing it in the movie theater. And my dad told me that I stood up in the middle of the theater and started spinning in circles and saying, "I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there." So,
you didn't want to be at Jurassic Park or at the movies?
No, I think at Jurassic Park.
It was kind of freaky, man.
Yeah, I think I was.
You know what I remember most about that movie? Do you remember the Velociraptors? Okay, they're conniving little sons of guns, man. And I forget, it was the female actress, and then I think it was Richard Attenborough. They're running from the Velociraptor, and they're hiding in a freezer. And they look at each other and say, all right, well, he hasn't figured out how to work a doorknob. And you look, and the doorknob starts to turn. You know what I mean? From the inside. So do you remember that scene?
Yes.
I don't think that movie's for little kids.
No, it wasn't. But I think I was 4 or 5, and I was super into dinosaurs. So my parents were like, "Oh, it's a movie about dinosaurs. Let's go see it."
Yeah, but stick to Barney, man.
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So
all right, good stuff, guys. Look, here's the deal. I'm going to ask a small favor. This coming Tuesday is episode 5. Sample a little bit of it. Let me know what you think. I want to. It's topical. There's a reason HBO's done this for 17 years, and whatever happens this year for the Cowboys, whether or not they win the division, make the playoffs, stay healthy, something bad, I don't know. I'm always going to juxtapose their season versus what I think I saw on Hard Knocks. So we may refer back to it later in the year. It's got a little bit of homework assignment for you guys. It's only about 55 minutes. You don't have to watch the whole thing. But if you get a chance, please sample episode 5 of Hard Knocks this Tuesday, and we'll talk about it again next Saturday night. All right, coming up, you know him, you love him, you can't live without him. The Raiders, Mike Mayock, made an interesting comment this week, and Mackenzie will comment on Mike Mayock's comment. Keep it right here for Mackinac Sports. I am Bernie Fratto. We're coming to you live from the Fox Sports Radio studios here in Las Vegas, so keep it locked right here. Don't go away. You're listening to Fox Sports Sunday on Fox Sports Radio.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Is that Shakespeare?
Nope. It's Geico.
Yeah, that's Shakespeare from one of his unpublished works. Oh, it be not for awakening. Nay, giveth thou the berries. For 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Nope, it's from Geico, because they help save people money.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but Geico got it from Shakespeare.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
To show you how easy it is to file a claim with Geico, we hired a soap opera star.
Gracious me, my car has storm damage and I've had to file a claim. Could it possibly get worse? Will my claims team leave me for someone else? Someone less intense?
No. Actually, when you file a claim with Geico, you get your own dedicated claims team who promises to stay with you throughout the process.
Oh, I've never known such loyalty. I can't wait for the second season.
Geico. Great service without all the drama.
Hey, do you love a good story? Great. Then you got to check out the #Storytime podcast. Each episode brings you the craziest, creepiest, and cringiest stories from YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, and beyond.
I'm gonna die. Chad could already be dead, or either he was smart and didn't come down anyways.
So at a quick glance, when I was turning off the light, I saw this thing in my kitchen, and it was kind of peeping out over to me.
Question is, name something that everyone knows the size of on their body.
Look, the internet is a dumpster full of stories, and I, your host, Will McFadden, dive in headfirst, sift through the flaming trash, and bring you nothing but treasures.
I was like, oh, right. That would be a really bad way to tell somebody that their brother died.
I swear this happened in slow motion. The champagne flute fell into the lap of Halle Berry, completely drenching her.
Listen to all 21 episodes of #Storytime now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, we're back on Fox Sports Sunday, Fox Sports Radio. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Fox Sports Radio studios right here in Las Vegas. We'll take you up to 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern. Want to remind you, Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99% of the places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report limitations apply. Okay, it's that time. We're taking you back out to Vegas. You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. We go to Mackinac Sports with Mackenzie Rivers. Mackenzie, what do you make of a coach who has an over-under win total of 7.5 saying we're going to make the playoffs this year or we have to make the playoffs this year? You've got the floor.
Yes, it was Raiders GM Mike Mayock who spoke for himself, oddly, and Coach Gruden saying, John and I will tell you, we feel like we need to be a playoff team this year. We've done the infrastructure work necessary. We've got to take care of business. Well, I don't know. They're 0-3 so far. They've failed to make the playoffs in each of their first 3 in this reincarnation of Gruden's Raiders. And I have the odds right here. The Raiders' odds to make the playoffs are less than 20%. In their 4th season, plus 350 if you think they can do it and make the playoffs, minus 480 if you want to lay the lumber. So let me ask you this, Bernie. For someone who seems to be saying this is do or die time, do you think there's an 80% chance that John Gruden and Mike Mayock are on the hot seat?
I don't think they're on the hot seat because I think Mark Davis really likes John Gruden. He gave him a 10-year deal for $100 million. But what I'm trying to figure out, and I know it's against a lot of practice psychology without a license, is why does Mike Mayock feel he has to come out and make this statement? Don't tell me, show me. And the truth of the matter is, Mackenzie, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but other 17 games, how many of the Raiders are going to be favored this year?
I don't have their schedule in front of me, but it's got to be 5.
Yeah, exactly. Less than half. Because we know they're an underdog week 1 at home against Baltimore. Then they're going to go to Pittsburgh week 2. This is from memory. You know they'll be a dog. Then they come back home against Miami. Now, I don't know what the record will be of the teams. The Raiders won't be better than 1-1. They might be 0-2. And Miami, I know they got New England week 1. Regardless, there's no way the Raiders will be laying more than a field goal. So that basically makes these teams even on a neutral. Then week 4, you've got a Monday night game in Los Angeles against the Chargers, who I also think are going to be improved. One of the things we have to factor in, Mackenzie, forget playoffs, what odds are just to win their division?
Last time I looked, it was like 8-1 for the Raiders.
Yes.
The Broncos and Chargers are both steaming, both optimistic in Vegas, but not the Raiders. It's funny you mentioned Mark Davis. His response was hilarious. He's not much of a quote, but this one was quite a chuckle. It's always nice to hear somebody say that, talking about how Mark Mayock said they have to make the playoffs. I'd be much more impressed if they did it. Yeah, you and the rest of the Raiders nation would be much more impressed if Mike Mayock stopped saying, hey, we have to make the playoffs, and actually did it. I got their straight-up and ATS record the 3 years together. They failed, Gruden and Mayock have, to beat expectations or have a winning record in each of their 3 years together. They were 6-10 against the number. Then they went 8-8 the last 2 years. So there's zero evidence to say this is going in the right direction. Why is Mike Mayock saying this despite Mark Davis giving Gruden a 10-year contract, probably the most powerful guy in the building, can't get fired? Because Mike Mayock can get fired. And if they fail to meet expectations for a 4th straight year, heads got to roll. Derek Carr's been balling out. His numbers are great. John Gruden is a made man. Mike Mayock understands that it's up to him to start getting playoff results sooner rather than later.
I like that data you just gave because it has to do with what they compiled versus, quote, expectations. So this year their expectations based on the markets are that their over-under win total is 7.5, and that's with 17 games. The money I see coming in, Mackenzie, is that the Raiders are going to win under 7.5 games because they have the 25th ranked defense, a remade offensive line. I'm not so sure they bring in John Brown to replace Nelson Aguilar, then they cut him. I really don't know what the hell they're doing. and maybe you can enlighten me as to what the hell they're doing, but when you add it up in the sixth toughest schedule, I think expectations, and I like that data you gave, because not only did they not make the playoffs, not only did they not, compete in a manner that would be befitting of what they believe they are, they didn't even meet expectations, which weren't that high to begin with.
Yes, and you mentioned it, the 7.5 win total. You can still bet that, but there are a lot of places, a lot of sharper books that are moving closer to 7 flat.
Wow.
So the sharpest bettors are saying, I know the Raiders have a good offense, but they have the 32 ranked defensive back, according to Sharp Football, defensive backfield. Not a lot of hype here in Vegas for the Raiders. And I think there's got to be changes. I just don't see how this core gets a lot better. The analytics crew that they have installed says, defensive backs, linebackers don't really matter. Well, when you keep losing, you keep giving up 40 points to Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, eventually you got to address that side of the ball. Despite what your analytics statisticians might say, you got to have solid play on both sides of the ball to compete in this league. No coach in the league would tell you otherwise.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You got to have solid play from all three phases. And I like Mike Mayock, and I like John Gruden, but at the end of the day, this is a bottom-line league. And whenever I hear a statement of that nature, it reminds me of the old comedy show called Police Squad with Leslie Nielsen about this boxer who used to tell his promoter, I can beat the champ blindfolded. I can beat the champ blindfolded. Finally, the promoter gets tired of hearing it. He says, well, what if the champ wasn't blindfolded? The point of the matter is, the Raiders, why do they run their mouth? Mackenzie, just got a few seconds. Do they make the playoffs, yes or no?
No, they don't make the playoffs, and they run their mouth to try to set the right expectations to keep their job longer, but I don't think it's going to work.
And you just nailed it. It's transparent, and the numbers don't lie. Just look at the last 3 years, failing to meet expectations. Coming up, can he meet expectations? I think he had amnesia. I'm going to talk about Matt Stafford. Keep it locked right here. You're listening to Fox Sports Sunday on Fox Sports Radio. The Fox Sports Sunday train keeps rolling right on. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. We're going to take you up to 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern. And I want to remind you that Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99% of the places in the U.S. to take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes 2021 Nielsen Report. Limitations apply. All right, one of the big offseason acquisitions in the NFL this year, which will lead to a year-long story, is that of Matt Stafford, who has spent a decade, or a little over a decade, 12 years in Detroit. And this is something that it's a subject matter that's very near and dear to my heart. And I've often said that if you weren't there in Ford Field to see Matt Stafford play in these games, well, you kind of have to recuse yourself from the argument. Now, people don't do that. They're of the belief that he was with this moribund franchise that couldn't get out of their own way, which is not untrue. Okay, by and large, the years that Matt Stafford were in Detroit, the team was subpar. But as Peter King once said, couldn't you just 1 year out of 12 put the team on your shoulders? And one of the things that really hacks me off, as Marty Morningwig used to say, is this notion that during his entire tenure, the cupboard was bare every time. Well, they did go to the playoffs 3 times. And Matt Stafford played in 7 playoff games. Check that. He played in 7 games that have what you would call playoff implications, meaning a regular season game. If you win, you're in the playoffs. If you lose, you're out. And then they played in 3 playoff games. 0-3 in playoff games, 0-7 in games with playoff implications. And he said something, Matt Stafford, last week in an interview. And before I go into this, I want to make sure I want to be completely clear with everybody so that folks don't selectively listen. I have nothing against Matt Stafford. He didn't do anything to me. I don't hold a grudge, any ill will. I just call him as I see him. I thought Matt Stafford in Detroit was beloved. He was a warrior. He played hard. He played hurt. He had a lot of heart and soul. Matt Stafford did everything but win. 10-65 against teams who finished above 500, and I just gave you his playoff record. And he said the other day, I'd really like to play a meaningful game and that mattered in the fourth quarter. Matt, are you suffering from amnesia? Look, first of all, the 2014 Detroit Lions team was a very good team. They were not only 11-5, they had the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL. And, you know, guys like Ndamukong Suh and Nick Farrell. They had the number 2 defense in the NFL with 5 Pro Bowlers. They were 11-5 and they made the playoffs and they played the Cowboys. And before I tell you what happened in that game, since obviously Stafford has amnesia and forgot that he had opportunities to play in games like that, and I'm going to tell you what happened. By the way, that team that was 11-5, they were 1-5 versus teams who made the playoffs that year. So there you have it. Before I tell you what happened against Dallas in, I think it was January 4th, 2015, I also want to share that in 2011, the Lions also had a very good team. They were 10-6, a top-ranked defense, 3 Pro Bowlers. And Stafford in that playoff year, the first time he went to the playoffs, they lost to New Orleans, and Stafford did his part by turning the ball over twice. But let's fast forward to January 4th, 2015, in a game against Dallas. Because what Matt Stafford said this past week is, I'd really like to play in a game in the fourth quarter that's meaningful. It happened multiple times in the regular season, and it happened in the playoffs twice. And I'm going to share what happened because I consider this to be the poster child game of Detroit Lions fans, long-suffering Detroit Lions fans who deserve better. And Matt Stafford had his chance to rewrite a different legacy. So let's set this up. In that playoff game against Dallas, again, this is a team that was 11-5, the Lions, with the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL. The Lions were leading 20-17 with 8:25 left in the fourth quarter when Matt Stafford threw a pass to his tight end, a guy by the name of Brandon Pettigrew. Now, the ball bounced off a Cowboy linebacker by the name of Anthony Hitchens. It bounced off his back, and a flag was thrown. And initially, the referee on the call, his name was Pete Morelli, initially announced a pass interference penalty against Dallas. But then the officials reversed the call without explanation, which took away the penalty that would have given Detroit a first down in Dallas territory. And for Lions fans, this was the end of the world. Everybody else's fault but ours. Here's the reality. Because this call became notorious only because of what happened after the call was made. First, Dallas gets the ball back deep in their own territory, and Tony Romo leads the Cowboys on an 11-play drive that culminated in a touchdown pass to Terrence Williams with 2:40 left in the game. What does that mean? Matt Stafford would get the ball back with almost 3 minutes left in the game and 3 full timeouts. That's where the amnesia comes in. He said he'd like to play in a game that mattered in the fourth quarter, that was meaningful, that was impactful, that had playoff implications. Well, he must have forgotten about the game against Dallas in 2015. So what did he do with that opportunity that day? This is all a matter of record. This is not a fairy tale. You can look it up. On the second play of the drive, where Matt Stafford had an opportunity to lead his team to victory with a number 2 defense, with almost 3 minutes to go and 3 full timeouts, on the second play of the drive, Stafford was hit by the Cowboys' Anthony Spencer and promptly fumbled. The ball was then scooped up by DeMarcus Williams, who proceeded to go Leon Lett, and he tried to return the ball for a touchdown instead of falling on the damn fumble like they teach you in high school. But the Lions miraculously recovered Williams' fumble, and voila, Stafford now has a second bite at the apple. So what did Stafford do with his postmortem life? On the 8th play of this drive, with 1:07 left in the game, Stafford fumbled again when he was hit by, you guessed it, DeMarcus Lawrence. Only this time, Lawrence secured the ball. Game, set, match. Dallas wins 24-20. Now, Stafford played hard, He was part of that 11-5, part of the reason they got to the playoffs. But when it mattered most in the fourth quarter in a playoff game, he couldn't get it done. How is it that a guy like Baker Mayfield comes into the league and within his first 4 years he wins a playoff game? Josh Allen within his first 3 years wins a playoff game. Stafford's never won a playoff game. Jared Goff, who's in Detroit, has actually won 3 or 4 playoff games, including one this past year, even got to a Super Bowl. You can give me all the nuance you want as to whose fault it is and whether or not the stars weren't aligned properly and Matt Stafford just got dealt a bad hand by the NFL gods, and after 12 years, now it's all going to be rightfully corrected, and he's going to be the difference between the Rams winning a Super Bowl and not winning one. I've always said that Matt Stafford is a guy you can win with, but not because of. For the record, the Lions' defense that day against Dallas was pretty stellar. They held the Cowboys to 6 out of 14 on third down conversions, and Tony Romo and company could only manage just a little over 300 yards of total offense. So that defense kept the Lions in position to win that game. That was the number 2 ranked NFL defense. You've now heard me repeat 20 times. You also had a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer by the name of Calvin Johnson, and other top receivers too. I'm not going to name the roster. I'm not going to read the box score. The bottom line is the Lions could have won that day. Moreover, in addition to the Lions defense doing their job, holding Dallas off, making a punt on third down 8 out of 14 times, the Lions, under Matt Stafford's direction, didn't score a single point the final 22 minutes of the game. As I've said before, you define the moment or the moment defines you. Now, the reason I said what I said about if you aren't in Ford Field to see what happens, a lot of times, a lot of those meaningless yards and points that the Lions got when they were trailing by 2 or 3 scores late in the fourth quarter against teams who didn't even make the playoffs, a lot of times the Lions found themselves in a hole because of Stafford's misgivings. He threw a lot of you know what? Next week I'm going to give some stats about the interceptions he threw and his turnovers over a 10-year period. And by the way, as I said earlier in the show, 23 pick sixes in his career. He leads all current NFL quarterbacks. I'm not throwing the guy under the bus. What I'm doing is giving you an objective analysis. There are personal feelings and there are objective truths. These are objective truths. 10-65 against teams who finished above 500. 0-3 in the playoffs. 0-7 against games and playoff implications. In games and playoff implications. And the cupboard wasn't always as bare as they want to make it out to be. And I'm going to go back to the games in Ford Field when you're actually there. There are times he'll do. By the way, does he have arm talent? Absolutely. Can he make the deep out throw? When he gets his feet set in the pocket, can he drill it over the middle? Does he throw the ball? Can he throw the bomb with touch? Yes, he can. Can he throw the fade? He can do all that. But when it matters most, and the game's on the line against a team above 500, I've yet to see it. That's when I see him try to keep a play alive and roll right, throw a floater across his body into a sea of hands when you're in the red zone. Maddening. You'll see him not secure the ball in the pocket when he's a whirling dervish trying to do just a little too much instead of going down and trying to live another day. Or force a pass into bracketed receivers in the end zone. Or maybe he's on the goal line trying to score a touchdown on a quarterback sneak and he fails to secure the ball and he loses it. Maybe all those things will magically go away when he puts on a Ram uniform this year. And if he does, I will tip my cap. If Matt Stafford leads the Rams to the Super Bowl, forget winning it. If he just gets the Rams into the Super Bowl, I will tip my cap. When you get to the Super Bowl, it's a one-game affair. Anything can happen. That's the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. There's been lots of upsets over the years. A lot of folks didn't think 44-year-old Tom Brady would win the Super Bowl last year against the Chiefs. I did, but a lot of people didn't. So just to get to that game would be quite an accomplishment. But all I can say is this. I am not of the belief that Matt Stafford would be the reason the Rams get to the Super Bowl. He's a guy you might win with, but not because of. And by the way, the division they're in, he struggled against all those teams. He struggled against Seattle. He struggled against the Rams. Well, he doesn't play the Rams because he's on the Rams. But he struggled against Arizona. He struggled against the 49ers. None of those teams feared Matt Stafford. They might respect Matt Stafford. Even their week one opponent. He's about 500 against the Bears, who are under 500 every year, just about. Matt Stafford had some success against the Bears. They don't fear him. They respect him, but they don't fear him. These are just the facts. And this is the way I see it. Matt Stafford has never won a playoff game in his career. But as long as you can blame the refs while avoiding accountability, Matt Stafford can remain a folk hero. Not in my eyes. Don't tell me, show me. And I'm telling, trust me on this. I have a long memory. If we get to December and they're in the playoffs, and we get to January and they win a playoff game, and they win 2 playoff games, I will give Matt Stafford credit if credit is due. I'm not rooting against the guy. I don't have a personal vendetta. My teeth itch when I hear this false narrative over and over about how he played in this moribund franchise and never had a chance. Again, by and large, for the years that Matt was there, the Lions were a laughingstock, but not every year. I just shared with you what happened in 2014, 2015. They lost 3 playoff games that he started. They got outclassed by Seattle, they got outclassed by New Orleans, and they got beat by the Dallas Cowboys. Tony Romo, he's an announcer now. Most of you don't remember when he played quarterback. Was he great? Yeah, but not that great, but he out-dueled Matt Stafford. Look, the key is do we look forward or do we look backward? We do both, because you cannot assess what's likely to happen in the future without at least taking into consideration what happened in the past. Now, I'm not currently living in L.A., but my crew is, and they pay attention, and I think they're Ram fans, and I know Chris is a big-time Stafford fan. I'm going to give them the floor, and what I want to do is hear a couple things from them. I want to hear, first of all, what is the expectation for Stafford and the Rams this year? Is it Super Bowl or bust? Is it get to the playoffs? Is it win a playoff game? Is it win a Super Bowl or just get to the Super Bowl? You tell me. I don't want to ask and answer my own question. I don't want to put words in your mouth. The second thing is, if the expectations are not met, whatever they may be, because remember, you can only assess the ultimate performance based on its juxtaposition against whatever the expectations are. If the expectations are just to make the playoffs and it's gravy, then it'll be a successful season. But if they fall short of the Super Bowl, considering they already got there with the guy they just traded, Jared Goff, well, then I don't see how you can call that a successful season. Again, I don't think he has to win the Super Bowl to be successful, but I do think he has to at least get there. But just as I call people out for not being in Ford Field, you can't have an opinion. I'm going to recuse myself because I'm not living in Los Angeles and I have nothing invested in the Rams. So coming up, we're going to talk to the crew about Matt Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams and get their perspective as they are closer to the team out there in Los Angeles than I am. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. Stick and stay. You're listening to Fox Sports Sunday on Fox Sports Radio.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Okay, audience, do you love trivia? Do you love the hit podcast, Stuff You Should Know? Then you'll love the new Trivial Pursuit game, Stuff You Should Know Edition. With 600 questions from the hugely popular Stuff You Should Know podcast, this game is packed with weird and unbelievable trivia inspired by topics on the show. You'll be challenged by brain-busting questions in 6 fascinating categories, including myths, legends, and conspiracies. And SYSK selects a mix of topics handpicked by podcast hosts Josh and Chuck. It's perfect for 3 to 6 players and adults from ages 16 to 116. If you love the Stuff You Should Know podcast, or you're just curious about the world, grab your copy of the Trivial Pursuit game, Stuff You Should Know Edition today, wherever you get your favorite board games.
I want to get back to being in my community group.
I want to continue having a soccer season.
So I can throw parties again.
So I can go to her parties.
It'd really be nice to dine in instead of getting delivery for a change.
So I can feel safe and protected for myself and my students.
We each have our own reason for why we're getting vaccinated against COVID-19. What will yours be?
Visit getvaccineanswers.org for information on the COVID-19 vaccines. It's up to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Back on Fox Sports Sunday, Fox Sports Radio. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. We'll take you up to 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern. And before I call in the crew to talk about this Matt Stafford subject, because they're all there in Los Angeles, I want to read a tweet from a gentleman named Eric. His Twitter handle is eHellatime. It's clever. I'm thinking he lives in Green Bay. Here's what he said. I'll read it verbatim. Stafford was slower than Brady with no brain. Never did anything till down 21 in the fourth. I loved it because it helped us greatly in Green Bay. Week 3, he's out for the year. And here's his play on words. Saw Bon Voyage money. He was making a little fun of Sean McVay there. Saw Bon Voyage money with another great spending debacle. I'm reading that because all my years I spent in Detroit, I always believed that behind the scenes, that's how they felt in Green Bay, and I know that's how they felt in Chicago, and probably in Minnesota. He's pretty good. He's not bad. He's not going to beat you. He doesn't scare us. Now he's going to go to Los Angeles, and he's the missing link between winning a Super Bowl and not winning a Super Bowl. That's where I throw a flag, and that's why I'm just a little harsh on this subject matter. But let's go to a guy who's also been there in Detroit and saw what I saw, although he's probably more optimistic. Chris Perfett, respond to any or all or none of what I just said.
So, Bernie, as you say, if you weren't in Ford Field, I was in Ford Field. I cover this team since 2015. I continue to cover it with a podcast and with the Pride of Detroit. I believe that in the past that was maybe true of Stafford, that it wasn't someone you could really win with, and he had a lot of faults and put the ball in some bad places. His work, however, with Jim Caldwell, moving forward after that time, made him a completely different quarterback. Since 2015, he has not thrown more than 11 interceptions in a year. In 2016, he had 8 game-winning drives. He had 8 fourth-quarter comebacks. In fact, speaking of fourth-quarter comebacks, he is tied 7th among all active and retired NFL quarterbacks for fourth-quarter comebacks. He's tied at 7th with John Elway.
That's fair, but against who, Chris? Against who? If you're 10-65 against teams that finished above 500, he's coming back against moribund teams. Go ahead.
You can only play the team that's in front of you. You know, maybe Chicago thought he wasn't a big deal. He beat Chicago like 6 times straight, maybe 7 times straight, if I'm not mistaken. Everything about him is that you caught him early in his career. He threw a lot. He had 700 attempts in 2012. However, since that time, I've watched him, be it in 2016, 2017, 2019, before he got hurt, where he was doing things with the ball where he puts it in a very tight spiral. He puts it between defenders, and he looks very tight and very, very, very competent. The big thing that he's going to have to worry about now in Los Angeles is that the last couple of seasons, near the end of the season, he's been hurt. And it's really hurt him where he's jammed his hand, and he's going to have to stay healthy for them at the Rams. However, I think for the Rams, they're going to make the playoffs. And I think at the very least, you maybe get a win out of it, but they've got at least 2 years for him, probably longer as they will eventually restructure his contract. But there's not a doubt in my mind, looking at the NFL right now, that Stafford isn't a top 10 quarterback, and he's very deserving of that title.
All right, I think that's a fair, comprehensive analysis. And I think you maintain some objectivity. Your assertion is early in his career he was guilty of a lot of the things, but in the last couple of years he's basically matured. Here's the situation. I've got to see him do it when it matters. I've got to see him do it when the heat is hot and it's hard to breathe, and he's putting the team on his back against a playoff team, not just anybody. But again, I think he covered a lot of ground there, and it was an objective analysis, and so I'm going to keep an open mind. Brian Finley, you care to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on Sean McVay here, Bernie, because with a talent in a quarterback like Stafford, you basically, despite the fact that the Rams right now have some question marks at the running back position, they've got so many weapons as far as pass catchers. Their defense doesn't have a lot of holes here. So I think that there might be a hotter seat on Sean McVay than the vast majority of the public sees here, because if this experiment doesn't work, I could see that there's not a lot of other excuses to go with here than looking right at Sean McVay. Although the one thing that does set this team back, Bernie, is what's going to happen at the running back position, which could affect and impact how well a guy like Stafford is going to play this year.
Well, okay, a couple good things there, Brian. First of all, we know Cam Akers got hurt. He's out for the year. And they brought in Sony Michel, who's not going to replace Cam Akers in terms of production. Truth of the matter is, New England fleeced the Rams. I think Sony Michel was going to get cut. That's how deep New England is. But we're back to the age-old argument again then. Stafford needs perfect conditions around him. That's not fair. But he needs optimal conditions around him to win. So he's going to need a running back just like everybody else. He's not going to be the reason you win. He just might be a guy you win because of. The other thing you brought up that I liked, Brian, was this is really on Sean McVay. He has hitched his wagon and pushed his chips to the center of the table for a guy who's never won a playoff game in 12 years. I think that's going to be an interesting storyline. The question is, if the Rams don't win for whatever reason, will Matt Stafford be the Teflon man and escape scrutiny? And I also think Chris also brought up a good point. He's got to stay healthy. Stafford plays hurt. He basically had a broken back a couple years ago, but we were told in 2019 if he hadn't gotten hurt, the line started out like 2-0-1. Oh, they might have gone to the playoffs. No, they wouldn't have. Stafford was healthy last year, and he stunk it up. Every time it's mattered, he hasn't come through. But, again, you meld what Chris and Brian had to say there. This is on McVay as well. He's going to need help from a running game. And, oh, by the way, maybe he has matured after being under Jim Caldwell's tutelage when Caldwell did make the playoffs 2 of the 3 years. Never won a game, but they did make those playoffs. And the bottom line is, can Stafford do it now with the bright lights in the big city? I got to see it. Don't tell me. Show me. Bo Benson, you got the final word on this.
Yeah, I think Sean McVay is not going anywhere. He's set here in Los Angeles. The way I think about Matt Stafford is I just listen to the way that his contemporaries and the people around him talk about him. Aaron Rodgers, I think, called him like the most underrated quarterback in football. And Kyle Shanahan, everybody's favorite coach up in San Francisco, went on Sean McVay's podcast with Peter Schrager and just talked about how upset he was when he saw that it was the Rams that were going to get Stafford because he was trying to get him to replace Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. So, I mean...
Doesn't that sound like coach speak to you, though? I mean, there's a decorum. Even Lou Holtz would say, well, we're playing Navy this week. They're incredible. They're a 48-point favorite. That's how you do it. That's
Shanahan and McVay are friends, and it's a very informal podcast. It sounded sincere when I listened to it. And we all know that San Francisco was doing everything they could to not have to start Jimmy Garoppolo this year. But I don't think they need to win this year. I don't think there's any immense pressure on them to win a Super Bowl right away. And if you try to say that, like, you know, Jared Goff got them there, I would argue that Jared Goff played a small role in that team getting to the Super Bowl. If you watched that team that year, it was all Todd Gurley, and as soon as he got hurt, they couldn't do anything. So yeah, we'll see what happens at the end of the year, but I don't think there's any immense pressure on the Rams or Matt Stafford to win a Super Bowl right away, just because there's not really that many people in Los Angeles that care too much about what happens with the Rams this year.
And that's where this is a nuanced conversation. I get it that Jared Goff, no one's going to confuse him with Johnny Unitas, and no one's going to confuse him with John Elway, but he was under center for 3 playoff wins, including getting to the Super Bowl, and played quite well, I thought, in a playoff win last year against the Bears. Look, the long and the short of it is it's a bottom-line league, and whether or not Stafford's given a hall pass if they don't win or he's given credit if they do win remains to be seen. He's not chopped liver. Matt Stafford is an extreme competitor. He's got the heart of a lion, no pun intended, and he won the city of Detroit over because he was a gamer. But he did everything but win. And I think people are going to be disappointed if they don't win. Now, maybe there's not immense pressure, but they sure moved heaven and earth to bring him over, and they're paying him a lot of money. So it remains to be seen. I think it's going to be a continued fluid situation as to what Stafford can do. Look, he's done enough in the league, guys, to warrant the respect of guys like Kyle Shanahan and guys like Sean McVay and right on down the line, right? He's done enough in the league, throwing for 50,000 yards, whatever the case may be. He competes. He plays hard. He did everything but win. I rest my case. Coming up, I'm going to give my prediction on what happens in the NFC West and what the Rams actually do. But first, Let's go to the man. He's so cool. When he buys a new car and drives it off the lot, it actually gains value. It's Bruin Finley with the latest.
Thank you so much. I believe that would be my motor home that I drive around. If not, it's usually my school bus that I drive by myself. Number 5. So, speaking of schools, a lot of college football happening on Saturday, including number 5 Georgia getting past number 3 Clemson 10-3. The one touchdown was a pick 6 as Clemson falls behind in the season early on. Then there was number 1 Alabama torturing Miami 44-13. Bryce Young had 4 touchdown tosses, and Canes QB Derek King had 2 interceptions. Number 15 USC torching San Jose State 30-7. The Trojans put up 17 points in the fourth quarter to salt away the win, while over at the Rose Bowl, UCLA ridicules number 16 LSU 38-27. Dorian Thompson-Robinson had 3 touchdowns, including 1 to the former walk-on and Greg Dulcich, a 75-yard scamper for a score, where Dulcich made several LSU players miss on his way to the end zone. Number 2, Oklahoma veers past Tulane 40-35. Texas A&M, the number 6 team in the land, gets a win. Cincinnati with a victory as well, as they continue to play well with their quarterback in Des Ridder. A couple downsides on the Pac-12 slate. You had a loss for Arizona, Washington State, Washington, and Cal, just to name a few here. So those are a couple teams that did not quite go as they would have liked as far as their first games of the season. As far as what else took place on Saturday, we did have a marquee baseball game that I did want to point out. Dodgers and Giants are now tied for first in the NL West after Los Angeles took it to San Fran 6-1. The final game of that series will be later on today. And then there's the U.S. Open, which rolls on from New York, and Ash Barty, the number 1 seed in the women's draw, had a 5-2 lead in that third set, the decider, and she imploded on the court, and it was a win for Shelby Rogers, the American, who is able to pull through and make her way to the 4th round, as we send it back to a man who, well, he might be a 4th rounder at the U.S. Open, or maybe a 4th rounder in the U.S. Open of sports radio. It's our guy, Bernie Fratto.
And those are the dulcet tones of the silver-tongued devil, Bruin Finley, with the updates. Before I get to my predictions on the NFC West, I had to reread this tweet a couple of times. I'll go ahead and give him a second bite at the apple. Eric E. Helletime. Let me paraphrase this by he's basically implying, and he's not wrong, that he is within his rights to question the Stafford signing because he sees Stafford as someone who's old and slow, and that's not wrong. But they're committed to $43 million. The Rams are committed to $43 million, win, lose, or draw. And this is on the heels of signing a running back 3 years ago, for $57 million, and then cutting him 2 years later. That's, of course, Todd Gurley, and then paying Jared Goff $134 million and cutting him 2 years later as well. Remember, he was a number 1 draft choice and also very high in Sean McVay's book. So using deductive reasoning, it's not unreasonable, not unfair to call into question the decision the Rams made. Be that as it may, guess what? This is not a subjective argument. It'll be decided on the field. So what will the Rams do in 2021? These are my predictions. I am not predicting the Rams are going to win the NFC West. I believe that's going to be the San Francisco 49ers. I've got them going 11-6 in what I consider to be the toughest division in football, right? This is a very tightly packed division, but the 49ers get to play 5 games against last-place teams from 2020, and that's going to help them quite a bit. The Niners open up at Detroit and then Philadelphia. Come on, man. Those are 2 W's barring something crazy. They're going to get out of the gate quick, and it's not going to hurt that they get back George Kittle back, they get back Nick Bosa, they get back Raheem Mostert, Deebo Samuel, Jimmy G. He's 24-8 as a starter. I got to believe Trey Lance only gets better. Maybe they create some packages for him. This is a team that's 1 year removed from a 13-3 season that ended in the Super Bowl. Last year was a debacle. It's not going to happen 2 years in a row. Kyle Shanahan is breaking in 2 new coordinators, but the Niners, if they stay healthy, are loaded. they will win the NFC West, in my opinion. All right, I'm going to give the Rams the benefit of the doubt. I still think they can go 10-7. Losing Cam Akers is going to hurt. He's going to miss the entire season with a torn Achilles. That puts a major damper on the team that was banking on, having a nice running attack to complement Matt Stafford's arrival. And, they lost a couple starters off last year's defense as well. You bring in Sony Michel. I do not think Sony Michel will fill the shoes of what Cam Akers would have done. And the Rams are going to be tested early. All right? No rest for the wicked. I know they get the Bears first, but 4 of their first 5 opponents were 2020 playoff teams. So you don't want to fall behind. As I just said, I believe the Niners will start out 2-0. If the Rams, start out 3-2 or 2, something along those lines, they're going to be digging uphill, but I don't think they're going to win the division anyway. Seattle, I think, is going to be right behind the Rams at 9-8. You never count out a team with Russell Wilson. You never count out a team that's only missed the playoffs once in the last 9 seasons. And as long as you got Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner, you are going to compete. But the Seahawks have significantly downshifted from a team that was clearly a perennial championship contender and a championship playoff team, or perennial playoff team perhaps. They're not only too reliant on too many veteran imports from other teams that haven't won. Wilson, I still don't know if I trust the relationship after all this mishigas happened back in February. They say it's all cleaned up, but are they going to let Russ cook? Are they going to run the ball? Will the offensive line protect him? Still some holes on defense. They're nowhere near the Legion of Boom team that they had years ago. But again, as long as you got Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner, you're going to compete. I still say the Seahawks are only going to be 9-8. Now, the Arizona Cardinals are going to be an interesting team to me. I think they're only going to be 8-9, 7-10, something along those lines. And I would say that Cliff Kingsbury and his team are going to have to figure out a way to finish the second half season. It's a 17-game season now. And when you look at what Arizona has done the last 2 years, and I like Kyler Murray, and I don't dislike Cliff Kingsbury. I think they've done a good job. The problem is, if the season was 8 games long instead of 16 or now 17, they might have been a playoff team. But it's not, because in the last 2 years, Cliff Kingsbury's first 2 years, they're a combined 5-11 in the second half of the season. So that's not good. They've got to figure out a way to play a whole season. They're also going to have to figure out a way to run the ball better and not be so reliant on Kyler Murray and his legs. They got to convert more third downs. And, I don't know how they practice. Maybe I don't know. They're just not fresh down the stretch. So the other issue that Arizona is going to have is they have showdowns with 5 2020 playoff teams in the final 7 weeks. So I think Arizona will fade at the end, most likely. If past is prologue, they got 5 playoff teams. So I've got the Niners winning the West, the Rams finishing second, the Seahawks third. So I'm going to give the Rams a hall pass and say they're going to make the playoffs. And they're a good team. I think they're a playoff caliber team. Now what happens? They might win a playoff game in the wild card round. I'm not going to guarantee that. But that's where it's going to end. That's my prediction. Save this tape. I'll eat my words in January. I made a lot of predictions in this time slot the last 3 or 4 years and had a lot of good ones go right, including both the New England or both of Brady's Super Bowl runs. All right, look, let me just say this before I break my arm patting myself on the back. The Rams might win a wild card game, but the reason they won't go any further is because if they get the divisional round, they're going to have to either beat the 49ers, the Packers, or the Buccaneers. That's the way it's going to roll. Stafford's not doing that. Sorry. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Coming up, speaking of stories, we're going to bring it back out to Vegas. You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. We're going to switch to baseball. Mackenzie's got some stuff on a certain team that's the scourge and the hate of the Western Hemisphere, including the Dodgers, but yet, lo and behold, they're back in, I almost said they're back in black, but that's just so lame to say. They're back in the hunt on the short list of the teams that could get to the World Series, and their bettors have been benefiting. Mackenzie will have the information for you. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. Keep it locked right here. Don't go away. You're listening to Fox Sports Sunday on Fox Sports Radio.
The stories that are affecting the Black community are being covered on the Black Information Network. Not a show or a podcast, BIN is a 24/7 news network covering stories from a Black perspective. Listen to the Black Information Network on the iHeartRadio app and get news for and by the Black community. Anywhere, anytime. Keeping you informed, keeping you engaged. The Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
We are back on Fox Sports Sunday, Fox Sports Radio. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. It's that time again. We bring you back out to Vegas. You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. Mackin' on Sports, Mackenzie Rivers. We turn our attention to baseball. And lest we forget, there's plenty of ways to cash on certain teams in baseball. Mackenzie, you've got your eye on a particular team that's actually performed pretty well for their bettors.
Yes, let's take a look at the Houston Astros. You may not remember this. They were one of the worst teams in history, in memory. 2011 to 2014, they won less than 60 games a year. Their average line was plus 170. Now, as bad as they were for that 4-year stretch, the last 4-year stretch, or the last 5-year stretch, 5 years ago they won the World Series, they've been as dominant as any team in baseball. And I think the betting market, believe it or not, is actually kind of missing the boat on this. I think because of the huge controversy, which was the 2019 betting scandal, people have kind of, they've soured on the Houston Astros. If you look at their average line, so they won the World Series in 2017, so they're going to be a public team after that. A lot of, notoriety is going to come with that. 2018, they're minus 190 on average. Do great. Win 63% of their games. 2019, they win 65% of their games. The market was very aware. Minus 210 on average. And then the scandal happens. They lose Cole. They lose Verlander. And they're not as good of a team. They only win 50% of their games, but the average line is minus 140, so it corrects. This year, Bernie, their average line is only minus 150. They're being treated like the team they were last year when they were almost 500, but if you look at their record, you look at their players, they're more like the team they were in 2019 when they were dominating the game. So I think they're a team that in select spots, there's a lot of value on.
This is really good data, Mackenzie, because if you're serious about betting, it's that kind of mathematical model that can be the difference between big profits or not so big profits. Currently, the Astros are 23 games above 500. They're 79-56. They're on the road tomorrow in San Diego. If you were to compare the Astros, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but hopefully you have something to compare another team of that same record, not named the Astros, are they priced differently to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, and the Padres are a good example. They're a team that I was surprised actually made a big bet on the first game of that series between the Astros and the Padres, because I was thinking if you look at the starting pitching, these teams are being priced like pretty much even teams, and maybe by this year's record they're pretty close. But if you look at the 5-year history, you look at the moving trend line like stock market watchers do, it's not close. The Astros were much better than the Padres, especially, and this is a great nugget, in the first game of a series since they won the World Series, plus 30 units. They're even better than that when that first game of the series comes on the road. And even better than that, 21-2 straight up. When they're coming off a road game, they're playing a series opener on the road, and they've had a day rest. I think it has everything to do with that analytics department, that scouting department, working with those players with an extra day. Just think about all the different modes of communication that can happen in that extra day when the best analytics and scouting team in baseball gears in on that opponent. 21-2 in that very particular, and we saw it with the Padres, very particular spot. I think it has everything to do with the way the Astros approach the game and the right things that they're doing. You give them an extra day to cheat, Bernie, they're unbeatable almost.
Well, you know what? I'm never going to defend the Astros, but in that infamous World Series, Game 7 was played in Los Angeles, so I'm just saying, okay, right. I'm not giving it. But by the way, real quickly, perception is reality. Yeah. The Chicago White Sox have been the media darling this year, and they deserve it, right? So have the White Sox been more expensive than the Astros on average?
That's a great example. One of those new teams
and I'll tell you
like
why.
the Padres.
I'll tell you why, real quickly.
Are more expensive, yeah.
And I'll tell you why. They got basically the same record. The White Sox are 79-57. The Astros are 79-56. You got about 30 seconds. Continue.
Yes, and the White Sox have better World Series odds than the Astros. Doesn't make any sense to me White Sox are a brand new team. Tim Anderson playing well. They had the Field of Dreams miracle. A lot of great things in the South Side right now. But you talk about how good this team is, you got to give me more than 1 years of data. I like the Houston Astros as an underrated team in baseball this year.
Okay, and that's the kind of data you want on this show. If you're a serious bettor and you bet every day and you bet the board or you find value, you're looking at a team in the Houston Astros. The numbers are telling you they're every bit as good as the White Sox, but they're cheaper. They're not as expensive as the White Sox. Do with that what you will. Coming up, let's go back to college football. I've got 15 teams in a season stat. Stick with us. I'm Bernie Fratto. Fox Sports Sunday rolls on. 2 down and 1 to go. I'm Bernie Fratto coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. We'll take you up to 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern. Want to remind you, Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99% of the places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report limitations apply. Coming up in about 15 minutes, you'll be joined by Dennis Fithian from WTK in Ann Arbor, a longtime veteran in the Michigan area, Michigan market, as it were, has his finger on the pulse of Michigan football like no one I've known since the early 90s. He was a huge part of my first show, The View from the Cheap Seats, and we've always maintained contact. We'll talk about Michigan and Big Ten football because they always manage to be in the news. By the way, real quickly, I want to talk about this topic because it's sensitive, but it's important because college football has a forfeit policy this year that they didn't have last year in this sense. And here's what I mean by that. So the COVID thing, they're managing it, but it hasn't gone away. And so it could rear its ugly head at any time. And every Power 5 conference has announced that college football teams who are unable to play due to COVID this fall must forfeit a game and receive a loss. And here's why it matters. Because clearly now, this gives teams with a higher vaccination rate a competitive advantage. And when the NFL announced a similar policy, it really led to a huge uptick in vaccinated players. I just want to give this some quick perspective because we just finished week 0 and week 1. So far, so good. Fingers crossed. Even though, Lane Kiffin tested positive. And look, you wish this thing would go away, but so far it's stubborn. And here's why this is an important subject matter to just broach ever so quickly. Let's have a little flashback. Last year, and remember, this was a reduced schedule last year. 118 games were postponed or canceled last year due to COVID. Now, if these same rules had been in place last year, the college football playoff would have looked much different. Let's take number 1, Alabama, number 9, Georgia, and number 10, Iowa State. Believe it or not, they were the only top 10 teams in the final college football ranking that did not cause a single postponement or cancellation. So last year you had postponements and cancellations. This year it's going to be forfeit. But number 2, Clemson, number 3, Ohio State, number 4, Notre Dame, number 5, Texas A&M, number 6, Oklahoma, and number 8, Cincinnati would have each been handed a loss under last year's policy. Check that, under this year's policy. That matters. Number 7, Florida. They were responsible for 2 postponements, so they would have plummeted down the standing. Florida, when you add in the forfeits, would have had 5 losses this year, or last year, if this year's policy had been in place last year. So the playoff would have looked a little different. So this is serious business. Remember, it's not being talked about a lot, but it's there. There's actually a forfeit policy. Let's continue to keep our fingers crossed. All right. If you've ever wondered, if you've ever asked a professional bettor, or you've ever asked someone who you consider to be sharp or knowledgeable, or someone who just seems to know a little bit more than the average bear, why are you betting that team this week when it doesn't seem to make sense or you're just not understanding? It's typically because they're aware, that bettor is aware of a trend or a circumstance that will take place down the road that they've got penciled and circled on their calendar. And I'm going to give you a handful of these that will rear their head in college football this year, right? For instance, Alabama, look, they're rock solid. You saw what they did today, and they covered today easily. But as the season goes on, they'll be more and more expensive, and they are, If you're going to bet Alabama, you're going to pay the Alabama tax. And the books are not in business to lose money. The spreads are not a predictor. They're just trying to create equal action on both sides. Bama only plays 4 true road games this year, and they may very well be undefeated. When they travel to Auburn in the season finale, the Iron Bowl is always a tough matchup no matter what throughout the records. Here's a situation, though, on Alabama that you want to pay attention to. Alabama has covered 19 of the last 21 games when they have to play back-to-back road games. They covered 19 and 21 the first of back-to-back road games. So when Saban goes on the road for that business trip, sometimes they'll play back-to-back road games. They cover that first one 95% of the time. When is that situation? They're going to be in that situation, coincidentally, October 9th at Texas A&M, when you know Jimbo Fisher will be lying in wait, and that could be, the one game that Alabama could trip up. I don't know what the number's going to be yet. I would say Alabama's going to be a short favorite on the road, but it'll be the first of back-to-back road games. They cover those 19 to 21. Clemson has a similar situation. They're only 1-9 to the spread versus non-conference teams when they're coming off a win of 10 or more. All right? So what does that basically mean? It means that in non-conference games, maybe Clemson lets their guard down just a little bit. They want to win their conference games. They want to win all their games, of course. But they have to be a double-digit winner. So keep an eye out, because November 27th, they go to South Carolina, and that'll be a non-conference game. And if Clemson wins that game the week before on November 20th by more than 10, you might want to look to fade Clemson. One of the rare times you might want to do that. Someone might say, well, why are you betting against Clemson on November 27th? Here's the line against South Carolina, because guess what? They're 1-9 to the spread versus non-conference teams when they won the week before by more than 10 points. Even Ohio State, they don't cover all their games. Depending on where you got the number, they didn't cover against Minnesota. Some numbers were 14.5. Some were 14. Only a few were 13.5. As you know, the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry, whether you want to call it the 10-year war, it's just an amazing, amazing college rivalry. For my money, I think it's the most intense college rivalry, if not sports rivalry going. And I will tell you, it's pretty clear Ohio State takes it very serious. They own that rivalry right now. But before this long streak started, Michigan was 17-12 against Ohio State in this rivalry. So the bottom line is it's going to be hotly contested. But did you know that Ohio State is only 1-9 against the spread the game before Michigan? And so what's interesting is when they play Michigan this year, the week before, Ohio State actually plays Michigan State. And Michigan State will have revenge on their mind, as Ohio State beat them by 40 last year. And Michigan State has a way of covering against Ohio State. So the game before Michigan, Ohio State's only covered one of their last 10. This year it happens to be against Michigan State. Michigan State might be a play on that day. Sooners, they didn't look great today, but they won. Here's a stat you're going to want to know about them. They're 11-0 to the spread before back-to-back games away from home. So when they're kind of like Nick Saban on that first road game. This is a little different. The bottom line is, when Oklahoma knows they're going on the road for back-to-back games, they cover that last home game. They take it serious. That situation occurs on September 25th when they're at home against West Virginia. Jot it down. These are little factoids. You're not going to go 100% on all these, but you're going to find that over the years, there's a reason these cover more than not. Did you know Notre Dame, they're not a great team this year. They lost a lot, but they're still 6-2 against the spread as a road favorite. Guess what? That's going to get tested Monday. I don't know if I like this game, but they're laying 7 at Florida State. I love Kirby Smart in Georgia. The guy's a stud coach. He was a Nick Saban disciple. He's the one team they're just not intimidated by Alabama. Boy, if Georgia and Alabama lock horns in the SEC championship game this year, that'll be a sight to see. But did you know Georgia is 14-0 against the spread as a favorite of 12 or less points, if especially they lost to the team they're playing the year before? Well, guess what? On October 30th, check the line versus Florida. If they're laying less than 12, you want to jump on Georgia. It's a revenge game against Florida. And I think anytime you back Georgia, it's like buying IBM or something. You're betting on the New England Patriots all those years when Brady and Belichick were covering blindly 63% of the time. You never felt like you made a bad bet. Boy, you know who looked really good today? And I think they can go into Indiana and beat them. And fingers crossed, maybe, if the football gods are smiling down, maybe Cincinnati will be the first non-Power 5 team to get to the Final Four. They're loaded. They look good. The only game they lost last year was a bowl game against Georgia. They improved a lot this year, even more. They crushed today. On October 7th, check it out. October 2nd, you want to check the line as the Cincinnati Bearcats. Here's a situation where they're 7-0 to the spread on the second of back-to-back road games. So you heard my stat about Nick Saban, the first road game. Then you heard my stat about Oklahoma, their last home game before going on back-to-back road games. Cincinnati is actually 7-0 against the spread on the second of back-to-back road games. That means when they go to Notre Dame this year, it'll be the second of a back-to-back road game. They're likely going to be an underdog. And I would not be surprised if Cincinnati's a strong play that day. Iowa State, again, they escape with a win today. This is all about survive and advance. You don't have to kill everybody. But here's a pretty cool stat about Iowa State. They're 7-1 against the number when they're coming off a bye week. Guess what? They're in that spot October 16th at Kansas State coming off a bye week. 7-1, obviously, with 2 weeks to prepare. Matt Campbell knows how to get it done. Florida, North Carolina, Oregon, Wisconsin, they've all got trends that I'm going to get to in a couple weeks. Check that, next week as well. I'll tell you what, let's squeeze one more in here, all right? Georgia, Florida, the world's largest cocktail party, right? Florida is 0-5 to the spread when they're a dog against the team they beat the year before. That's going to happen this year against Georgia, so you're going to want to get on Georgia and fade Florida, right? I just talked about that. On October 30th, they'll take on Georgia. They beat Georgia by 16 last year. World's largest cocktail party. Not sure what the line's going to be, but if it's less than 12, Georgia covers that a ton. And Florida, I just told you what their record was. They're 0-5 as a dog when they're playing a team who they beat the year before with revenge. I'm going to continue this next week, actually, because Oregon's got some stuff. Wisconsin, Miami of Florida, not Miami of Ohio, and in North Carolina as well. And I'm going to save that for next week because most of these games don't take place till later in the season. And look, you're dealing with human beings. They can't get it. No team every week, week in and week out, is going to bring their best effort. They're going to bring their best effort, but they're human, and they're not going to be able to perform in a way. You're just not going to. Michigan just isn't going to get up for, Northern Illinois, who they've got in a couple weeks, the same way they're going to get up for Ohio State. They're human. So you watch these things and these trends who have, they've been established over years with a track record. These are things that you want to put in your backpack and call upon later for when the season rolls around and those specific dates, so you can try to find an edge. All right, coming up, we're going to go out to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and welcome in a gentleman who's got his finger on the pulse of Michigan football and Big Ten football as well as anybody I've known since the early 90s. His name is Dennis Fithian. You don't want to miss this segment. I'm Bernie Fratto. We're coming to you live from Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio Studios. Stick and stay. Keep it locked right here on Fox Sports Sunday, Fox Sports Radio. We're back on Fox Sports Sunday, Fox Sports Radio. I'm Bernie Fratto coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio Studios. You tired of waiting around for hot water? Choose Navien and get instant hot water for spa-like comfort while you lower your bills. Save hundreds on a Navien tankless water heater with local rebates at tanklessmadesimple.com. All right, let's welcome in our guest. Gentlemen, I got great respect for. We go back almost 30 years. Did the Detroit Lions pre- and post-game show together back in 2007. Spent many years together in Ann Arbor. No one has more of a finger on the pulse than the Michigan Wolverines and this guy. Say hello to Dennis